Welcome to What's on Tap. I'm Brad Trapnell and I'm the owner. Today we are going to talk about glassware and the pouring dynamics and growler fills. Why is glassware so important? Glassware is important because we sell the craft beer experience, and the type of glassware will accentuate the flavors and aroma of the beer that's poured into. And so that's why it's important for us to be selective about which type of glass we pour the beer into. I've got several glasses out here today. We change our glassware from time to time, so it's not something that's going to be completely static. It'll change. But just to give you some ideas of what we do, this is a great glass for IPAs. IPAs have the heavy aroma from the hops, and it will help accentuate that. This is more of an English style Nonic pint glass. This is sort of a Swiss Army knife. You can pour just about anything into this type of glass. This glass is great for pilsners and lagers. This is an interesting glass that we've recently seen become popular that are used for smaller pours for things like stouts and sours, typically more flavorful type of beers. This is a Belgium style tulip glass, great for other smaller pour. You can see there's the line right there that we might serve for special events or other types of things. And these are taster glasses. So one thing about tasters, we offer our patrons the option of tasting a beer. When you're offering a taster, you want to pour just about an ounce or less. The whole idea behind a taste is that they can discover if they really don't like it or not. I'm not a big fan of tasters because to really get the characteristics and the flavor of beer, you need to have a larger taste. You need to let it kind of sit on your palate a little bit. So we do offer that as a courtesy to our customers. We want to minimize that because we're trying to preserve the beer in our taps, obviously. So this is a flight, and flights are a super popular option because a lot of people may not have an idea of what they want, and it gives them the opportunity to sample from any of our taps, and they get to pick any four out, and they can taste away and enjoy that. Flights are a great option for people coming in, and it's something that I would highly recommend that you can sell. Pouring beer is important that it's poured properly because we want to minimize the waste. We don't want to pour a whole lot of foam out of every beer, but we want to pour it just right. It's important, number one, to use the right type of vessel, but to pour properly so that our customers can experience craft beer the way it's meant to be poured. Now, when you pour beer, you want to ideally have an inch to an inch and a half of head at the top. Now, that's not always going to be the case. Certain types of beers and other drinks that we pour from draft will not produce much head. What does head do for the beer? Head helps actually, the foamy part at the top will preserve the aroma and the taste of the beer. So it's important to get the proper pour with the proper amount of head. So we always are going to rinse each glass on the vertical rinsers before we pour it. Rinsing it cools down the vessel, and it will improve on the physics of the pour. So when you're actually ready, you've rinsed the glass and you're ready to pour, you want to pour the beer at a little bit of an angle, about 45 degrees, and you want to have typically the spout is going to be close to the glass but not touching it. You want to pour it in such a manner that it's filling up but not foaming up until the very end, and it's just going to take practice. Each beer pours a little bit differently. If you're pouring something that is the first pour of the day and the beer has been in the lines overnight, it might pour differently. It will change with pressure. It will change with the amount of foaminess and the temperature. Temperature is a huge thing. Typically, if beer is warmed up, so maybe it was just delivered off of a truck, it might be pouring a little bit foamy, or if it's been agitated, if it's been moved around in the keg room. There's lots of different reasons why beers will pour differently at different times. And so it's just going to be something that you'll have to practice and get a feel for to get the right pour. But once you do, it'll be an art, and you'll understand it and you'll do really well with it. Okay, we're here talking growlers. And why growlers? Why growlers when you can go get a 6-pack from a store? Well, draft beer is the highest standard when it comes to beer enjoyment. The reason is it's kept at a constant temperature and it hasn't had any light exposure. So typically you're getting the freshest, highest level of experience of tasting beer from draft. And growlers are a way of taking the fresh draft beer home with you in a vessel that you can easily transport and enjoy it. So growlers will come in all sorts of different sizes and shapes. There's no way I could show you all the different types of growlers you're going to fill, but these are some of the most common ones, and they most typically come in 32 and 64 ounce sizes. These guys are called crowlers. They're very popular, and it's actually a can that we seal on premise that keeps the beer even fresher. Typically, people will ask, how long does a growler keep when it's filled? I tell them about up to a week. It's meant to be enjoyed sooner rather than later, so the sooner you can take it home and enjoy it, the better. Now with these guys, these are 32 ounces. They fill, and because of how they're sealed tightly, they can keep for a very much longer period of time. So I've had people tell me that they've kept crowlers for up to a couple of months and it's still perfectly fine because it's sealed just like you would find a regular beer sealed at the store. So as far as care instructions for growlers, the What's on Tap branded growlers actually have the care instructions on the back, but it's pretty simple. We have the highest standards for filling growlers because we want people to enjoy growler filled beer and bring it back. And so we recommend people rinse it with hot water and let it air dry before bringing it back to us. And we're going to sanitize it before we fill it. Okay, we're talking about filling growlers. We're going to demonstrate filling a growler and the proper way to do that. And the first thing I would tell people is that when somebody brings a growler in to fill, typically most of our customers are conscientious about rinsing their growlers and taking good care of them because they tend to be the kind of people that appreciate that. But you will occasionally find people that don't rinse them out, and the smell, especially if it's been in the back of a hot car, can get kind of funky. So you take the cap off and kind of smell it, and if it smells kind of funky, we might need to do some extra rinsing. But either way, we're going to sanitize it. That's one thing we want to make sure we tell our customers is we're going to always sanitize the growler before we fill it for you. And we're going to basically put the growler in our sanitized solution. Remember, we're not using detergent soap, which could leave residue, but just the sanitized water will do. And give it a good rinse around with that. And then we're going to take it and rinse it on the inverted rinser at the taps and make sure it's good and rinsed. And lastly, before we fill it, we've got these hoses here. So these hoses basically blast out CO2 into the vessel. And it's going to push all the oxygen out. And we had mentioned how we're all about best practices for craft beer. Getting the oxygen out is going to ensure that when we put the beer or whatever inside the vessel, it's going to be as fresh as it possibly can be by eliminating all the oxygen. Oxygen being the enemy of freshness. Then we're going to take one of our hoses, we're going to connect it to the tap. The reason we use the hoses, some places will not, but we use the hoses because, again, we want to actually reduce the amount of friction that's being poured into the glass in order to minimize the waste. So we're going to drop it in there. You don't want the bottom of the hose to touch the bottom of the growler because that's going to cause for more agitation. You want it about 1 inch from the bottom. And then you also want to tilt it so you're going to minimize the amount of foam or head that's going to be pouring into the growler. And then you're ready to turn on the tap. So sometimes it'll come out fast, sometimes slow. Some of the growlers you fill are not going to be see-through as this is, but they may be steel containers. So you're going to have to kind of get a feel for where it fills up. And in this particular case, these growlers have a fill line. This is 32 ounces and the other one's 64 ounces. You don't actually go to the very top usually. So it'll fill up when you get to about that spot. It's just going to be something that you have to practice. It's a familiarity you get with filling growlers. And again, just like pouring beer, it's an art more than a science. So you're going to fill it up as much as you can with as little waste as you can. That's the general gist of what we're trying to accomplish. Now, once you fill it up, you're going to cap it off. After that, we rinse out the bottom or wipe it with a towel. And we have our tags that we put on that show what kind of beer it is. If you're filling a crowler, then we actually will mark it on the can. It fills essentially the same as a growler. It's actually a little bit easier because the mouth is so wide. Once you'll start filling a lot of growlers, you'll notice that the ones with the wide mouths at the top, such as the crowler can, are actually quite a bit easier to pour. Another thing, you could also see down at the bottom and determine how full it is, and it's a lot easier to fill these things actually. So you're filling a crowler, we still are going to put the hose in and blast out the oxygen with the CO2, and we're going to fill it up, and then you just put the cap right on the top of this, and we're going to take it right over to the machine, and we're going to run the machine, which works super simple. We'll show you that when you come in for your training. It spins around one direction either way, and you're done.